Egyptians lived with the idea of the afterlife or eternal life as part of their daily existence. We see this in ancient Egyptian poetry. We see it in the fact that they were a very stable people while doing what we would consider the very boring work of building decade after decade the great pyramids that they built. So their belief was that Osiris, as a god, would weigh their soul. To win eternal life, they had to pass this test. And the test was that Osiris would weigh their heart against the feather of truth. It's a symbol that we see throughout Egyptian hieroglyphics and markings in different places, this idea of weighing the heart against the feather of truth. The feather of truth is sometimes in hieroglyphics meant to stand for the law, so the God's law would standing there and their heart would be weighed against it. Here's a picture of the weighing of the heart. You can see the heart on the one side and the feather of truth in the other there. And so there were words spoken at the weighing. It was a ceremony that they did. I am pure, trying to say to God, I'm innocent, I haven't hurt people. And so all kinds of things were said here. I haven't hurt my associates, I haven't defiled a god, I haven't caused people pain or hunger, I haven't caused people to cry. They would say these things because they wanted to pass the judgment, because they ultimately wanted to get to the happy field of food. If they didn't pass the judgment, they would be fed to the crocodile-shaped eater of the dead. That was the fate for people who did not pass Osiris's test. But to those who did, they entered into the happy field of food, a place where there would be eating and drinking and eternal feasting. Egyptians believed that the afterlife would be much like life on earth, so they buried the dead with everything that they would need for eternity. That's why they got into mummification, so that the soul could have use of its body in the next life. We can see a quick comparison here of the different societies that we study in the second chapter of our textbook that talks about ancient peoples. The Hebrews, they believed in Yahweh, one God. The Egyptians believed in Amun-Re, the sun god, as their chief god. The Sumerian gods were sort of human-like. They were tied to the forces of nature. And the Persians believed in Ahura Mazda, that he ruled the world. Basic components of the Hebrew faith were the Ten Commandments, the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, sometimes called the 5 books of Moses. The Exodus was a great event in their history, where Moses led them as captive slaves out of Egypt and toward their promised land. The Egyptian religion was polytheistic. They worshipped many gods. There was the god Osiris we talked about that would weigh their heart. There was Amun-Re, and the gods of the Nile were also worshipped. The Sumerians were also polytheistic, and they had a rather gloomy view of the afterlife, perhaps going along with the fact that in Sumeria there was often floods and life was gloomy, and so the idea of the next life was gloomy too. Zoroastrianism, the Persian religion, was also a monotheistic religion like the Hebrew religion, and it taught that there was a paradise for those that did good, and so good would triumph in the end. The ruler of the Hebrews, they had kings. David and Solomon were 2 of the most famous kings, the first 2 kings of Israel, and then they went through a division. The Egyptians had all-powerful pharaohs who were descendants of the gods. The Sumerians were more political rulers that headed city-states, and they headed the armies. And in the Persians, King Darius divided Persia into principalities or satraps, and they all had laws. The Great Pyramid is the largest structure on the face of the earth. It was the tallest building on the earth until the Eiffel Tower was built. And so these are the names of the passages that were in the Great Pyramid. The lower, where the entranceway was, of course, on the outside. And then if you went straight down that descending passage, you'd end up in what's called the pit. Then there was the first ascending passage that was narrow and low. You'd have to duck down to walk through that. Then you came to the Grand Gallery, 28 foot high, a beautiful corbelled piece of architecture. And then ultimately you'd work your way up to what's called the King's Chamber, an incredible piece of strength and beauty inside the Great Pyramid. And below it was the Queen's Chamber. Then there were these air passages in the King's Chamber. They go all the way to the outside, so some people think they provided some kind of ventilation. But the Queen's Chamber shafts stopped short. They didn't make it all the way to the outside, and they were only discovered in the 19th century. And just in the past decade, really, they've been explored with robots. And there's a great mystery attaching to the air passages out of the Queen's Chamber, just like there is to all else about the Great Pyramid. Notice that those air shafts point to stars, Sirius, Orion's Belt, and Alpha Draco. So some people think the Egyptians had some kind of connection with the heavens because of that.